President Cyril Ramaphosa has signed into law the legislation affirming the institutional and operational independence of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. Now, this is a body that investigates alleged offences committed by police officers. But just how significant is this development, and what does it mean for the work of the IPID? Let's speak now to David Bruce, Institute for Security Studies consultant on policing. David, thank you so much for your time this evening. At a practical level, probably one will ask, what does it all mean for the work of the IPID?
Right. Well, I would like to, have something positive to say about the Act as it now is, and I would acknowledge that there are positive aspects of the Act, but overall, IPID's job is to contribute to trying to ensure that there's appropriate standards of conduct by the SAPS. And overall, I would say that the Act, as it has now been passed, at the very least doesn't take us forward, and I would argue it even takes us backwards on that point. So there's three critical provisions of the Act, that I would, argue that one would focus on. The one, of course, relates to the independence of IPID, and that's the critical issue there was the appointment process related to the appointment of the IPID executive director. And there, what the Act has done is essentially take us back to exactly where we were before the amendment process started.
And is that a good thing, especially when you look at how things have been done in the past, even that case ending up in the Constitutional Court? So does it now give the IPID a little bit more leeway when it comes to the appointment?
No, you see, the appointment, the issue is about the independence of IPID and about trying to ensure that you have an appointment process that ensures that you have the person who is capable and is going to lead IPID in a manner that contributes to the independence. And essentially what the bill has done, the Act is that it has done nothing to restrain or limit the minister's influence over the appointment process. So, as I said, insofar as it has any impact on that issue, it's essentially taken us back to where we were before the bill was introduced. You may remember that when the bill was introduced, it caused a major outcry because it, in many ways, it seemed to be intended to reduce IPID's independence.
And when you look at, of course, the involvement, as now you've just spoken about, and I was going to go there because a lot of the focus has been the involvement of the ministry in this particular portfolio, and others saying that it also leaves it with much less teeth than it would need to, and much less of independence. So what are the dangers that are lurking if we are now taking a step back instead of a step forward?
Well, you see, the issue of the appointment process related to the IPID executive director is not the only issue. The one aspect of the bill is Section 28 deals with IPID's mandate. And in some ways, the amendments that have been introduced to this section of the bill might be seen to increase the scope for certain kinds of abuse, increase the likelihood of certain kinds of abuse by police officers. There's another provision, Section 30, which deals with referrals by the SAPS to the police for disciplinary procedures to be implemented. And there what we have is a situation where the police frequently use the existence of IPID to absolve themselves of responsibility for taking disciplinary action where it is urgently called for. And in many ways, what the Act now does is reinforce any kind of tendencies in that direction that exist within the police.
I suppose also, there's another aspect of it as well, which looks at, whether or not the officers would be on duty or are off duty. They can still face investigations into whatever conduct that could require the work of the IPID. Some have lauded this as a step in the right direction. Is it, in your view?
Well, I think, that would be, potentially one of the more positive aspects of the bill, that it just, in some cases clarifies that IPID mandate applies both to conduct on and off duty. So, I think, there are a large number of different provisions to the Act, provisions that have been amended. And, and so, my concerns are about the overall impact, but I do not want to suggest that there aren't aspects of the bill that that are quite positive.
And David, listening to what you have to say then, it does look like there needs to be a lot more that might need to be looked into, particularly when it comes to accountability, because essentially where things stand with the IPID has been always that people would say you need to rid the system of the bad apples and you need to give the IPID a bit more independence. So I suppose that's something that may need to be looked into a little deeper, because I'm listening to what you're saying. It sounds like there's mixed reaction to accountability.
Right. You see, also what has to be taken into account is that insofar as we want to ensure that we have a police service that is consistently respected for adhering to high standards of conduct, that isn't something that we can achieve through IPID. It is actually something that needs to start with the SAPS itself. And so the scrutiny that we need to apply around this kind of issue needs to start with scrutiny of the SAPS and with addressing questions to do with whether the SAPS is, fulfilling its responsibilities in relation to the conduct of its members. IPID can, at best, serve as a check on the conduct of the SAPS, but insofar as we're relying on IPID to ensure that there is appropriate conduct by our police officers, that isn't, we aren't likely to get very far.
And it'll be interesting to speak to the SAPS as well about this, because you're raising very critical and pertinent points to say don't shift the goalpost, do the job that you're supposed to be doing, and don't leave the job for the IPID, because the image of the SAPS is quite important. David, before I let you go, very briefly, we speak at a time when there was that discovery of that alleged military camp in Mpumalanga as well. This further complicates the picture around the SAPS, doesn't it?
Well, it isn't actually an issue that I can really comment on. I must just be quite honest here.
Yeah.
That it's not an issue that I followed, and it's not really an issue that I'm in a position to comment on. I apologize for that.
No problem, David. Thank you so much for your time. That was David Bruce there with the Institute for Security Studies, and he's the consultant on policing. So certainly a lot of focus on this particular IPID, amendments here in the Act, especially when you think about its independence, you think about the appointment of the executive head, and also at the same time, the work that police need to do. So we definitely need to try and reach out to the SAPS in order to understand from their vantage point, how does this begin to change the picture?